All right, we are live for the Panther-Lair Post-Game. First Panther-Lair Post-Game of the season. Hopefully everything's plugged in and everything's working and everything's transmitting as it should. We hope. You never know. You never know when you're doing this for the first time. You never know when you're doing it for the 50th time if everything's working properly. But hopefully, if you're in the live stream right now, you're in the chat, you can just comment and tell me that you can hear it. You know, it's a tough call right now as we get started. You know, putting on the TV over here in the background of the Panther-Lair studios, just so we can keep an eye on the games. Well, what do you put on? You know, first question, Pitt fans, before we even dive into Pitt's game, are you putting on Penn State, West Virginia, or are you putting on North Carolina, South Carolina? I mean, both games involve a future opponent, right? One involves an ACC opponent. The other involves a team you're going to face sooner, and one that you're certainly more interested in, and just so happens to be against a team that you don't particularly care for, I presume. Yeah, it looks like everybody says, sound is good, so I appreciate that. I put on Penn State, West Virginia, but it's a real possibility that might flip over to Carolina's, the two Carolinas, the North Carolina, South Carolina, just to see something a little bit more interesting. But welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the post game, the first post game of the season. It's fun to be here. I'm glad we could do this. I got a drink. I hope you got a drink. And we'll start it off right, just like that. You know the deal. What we always say. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com is the YouTube channel. Like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. We have the daily morning Pitt videos. We have the live show on Wednesday night, the Panther-Lair show. We do these live streams after games, which is always fun. I've been looking forward to this more than anything. Videos, press conferences, all that stuff. We have it at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any of it. Right? And then, of course, the website Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, recruiting. You want to make sure you keep up on everything. And we got a lot of coverage. You can see all the headlines already up there. What you can't see is the headline for the video of post-game chat with Sean Watson. I went in and caught up with the former Pitt offensive coordinator, the Wofford Terriers head coach, to chat about the game and see what he had to say after Pitt beat Wofford. I can't say it was anything too enlightening. It was about what you would expect from a guy whose team just lost by 38 points. He wasn't too excited about reminiscing about the past, but it was fun to chat with him a little bit, and you can check that out right there at Panther-Lair.com or on the YouTube channel here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Homer Simpson says he's watching West Virginia, Penn State, could care less about North Carolina. I'm interested. I'm interested in that question. I want to hear what you guys have to say as we go through the next hour here, particularly as these games develop. Which game are you watching? Are you watching West Virginia, Penn State? Are you watching North Carolina, South Carolina? Whatever you're choosing to watch right now, I think we all know what we were watching 5 hours ago. Because 5 hours ago was the kickoff of the 2023 Pitt football season. I've got an assortment of stats and notes. I got the old legal pad out. There's the whole game. There it is. And look, let's start right off the bat. Impressive numbers. 45 points, 491 yards of total offense. Pretty solid split of 274 passing yards, 217 rushing yards. 8 of 14 on third downs, 3 of 3 on fourth downs, 6.4 yards per play. Solid number there. 41 and a half minutes of time of possession. Held Wofford to less than 19 minutes of time of possession. Forced 6 sacks, forced 4 sacks, forced 6 tackles for loss, 1 turnover, didn't turn the ball over at all. Only gave up, I think Wofford ran 2 plays in Pitt territory. And that doesn't count the 75-yard touchdown pass at the end. I mean, it was domination. It was domination from start to finish. Never mind the fact that they connected on that pass at the very end. It was domination from start to finish. Pitt was in control of this game. We'll talk about the opening offensive series, how maybe that wasn't Pitt's finest moment, but they really kind of settled in and controlled the game. And I'm going to sit here and say what you're probably going to sit here and say, what we're all going to sit here and say, which is that doesn't mean anything about, for the Cincinnati game. It doesn't mean anything for the West Virginia game. It doesn't mean anything for Carolina or the other 11 games that they're going to play this season. It doesn't. This game happened. It goes in the record book as a win. The stats all count. Phil Dracovic has now thrown a touchdown pass. Carter Johnson has now caught a touchdown pass. Rodney Hammond, if you happen to be one of the sickos who do things like college fantasy football leagues, you've got him for 2 touchdowns now. All the stats count. It counts as a win, and you move on because there's not a lot else you can. I don't want to say there's nothing else you can take out of it. You're not going to sit here and say, boy, they're going to be great this year, and I believe that because they beat Wofford 45-7. And I'll agree with you about that. I mean, we're going to talk at length about Phil Dracovic. We've all been wanting to see Phil Dracovic throw the ball. We've all been wanting to see the passing game in action. We've all been wanting to see what this offense is going to look like. And we saw it, but we saw it against a pretty overmatched team. And so rather than sitting here and saying that we know what Phil Dracovic is going to do this season or we know what this offense is going to be this season, we can analyze some things, we can criticize some things, we can evaluate some things, but ultimately we can sit back and say, well, let's see what happens when they play a real team. My main point would be this. It's better than the alternative. It's better than losing this game. God forbid. It's better than just kind of not dominating in the game. It's better to dominate a game like this than it is to not dominate a game like this. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to dominate every game. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to play like this in every game. It really doesn't mean that you're going to get away with some of the things you got away with in this game. But what it means is you went out against an inferior opponent, an opponent that was considerably overmatched, that had some personnel issues. It was walking into a paycheck and probably little expectation of anything beyond that. And you took care of business. You beat them the way you should beat them. I think that's an important point to keep in mind, and it's something we'll probably say a lot. And I imagine, I'm already seeing, people are already in the chat talking here, and I think that's probably an opinion we're going to see a lot of, is people saying, well, it's better than not doing it. You know what I mean? It's better than not having this kind of outcome in this game. So whether we want to take it for a lot, take it for a little, or just say, well, it happened and move on, it's better than the alternative. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not things to evaluate and consider here and analyze and look at. And I'm going to get into the chats in just a second. But it starts with Phil Dracovic. And Phil Dracovic did not start off very good. This wasn't a great start to the game from Phil Dracovic. First play of the game, he throws a pass to Dejon Reynolds. Looked like it was 5 yards, but the pass was so low that Reynolds put his knee on the ground to catch the ball and ended up being a 0-yard gain. The next time Dracovic dropped back, it was after Pitt had to convert a 4th and 1, with Dracovic running a sneak that gained 4 yards, which, brief aside, and we usually tend to do this as we go through these live shows, Pitt was remarkably good at the quarterback sneaks. Now, maybe they just had a big advantage up front in the interior of their offensive line against the interior of Wofford's defensive line. But, man, it seemed like every short yardage quarterback sneak gained like 4 yards, which usually you just get the yard or two that you need. I don't know if that's going to work against Florida State and Notre Dame, but it seemed to be able to pull that off. The next time Dracovic dropped back, it was 1st and 10 from the Wofford 35, and he took a 12-yard sack. Not a good play for those of us who've been talking about his escapability and how he can keep plays alive. So, first 2 dropbacks, he throws one that's low enough that a guy has to put his knee on the ground to catch it. Second time, he gets sacked for a 12-yard loss. And then on the next play, when it was 2nd and 22, he tried to throw to Dejon Reynolds again, and he one-hopped it. That's not going to cut it. 3rd and 22 from the Wofford 47. Frank Signetti called a quarterback draw. Basically just gave up, which maybe it's just me, but if I'm going to give up on a drive, I'm not going to be, having Phil Dracovic run the ball, and that's how you're giving up. I don't want to put him in harm's way any more than I have to. So, first drive, not good. A little bit concerning, particularly after the defense came out and just dominated Wofford right off the start. But we'll talk about the defense in a second. Second drive, Dracovic, didn't necessarily get a lot better. First play of the drive, he's under pressure, has to scramble a little bit and throws one to Malcolm Epps that ended up losing a yard. And Epps had to really stretch out to try to catch it. And then on his next drop back, he scrambles and throws to Rodney Hammond. A pass that was actually pretty good. Hammond dropped it. Hammond should have caught it. I don't know if he saw the safety out of his peripheral vision and got a little bit jumpy. I'm of the mind I'd have to rewatch it, but I thought as I was watching the game, I thought Hammond had a chance to make a really big play if he just catches a pass that was thrown to his hands. I thought he had a chance for a really big play. I didn't think safety had a great angle, but maybe he did. But it was a better pass. It was a better pass. And I think this is where Phil Dracovic's momentum in this game started to head in a good direction. A few plays later, they're at 1st and 10 from the Wofford 34. He throws a short pass over the middle to Bub Means. Bub Means turns upfield and goes 24 yards to get the ball to the 10. Rodney Hammond scores one play later. And here, Dracovic was kind of rolling. First play of the second quarter, he throws to Sibo Flemister in the flat. Flemister gets 13 yards. And then 2 plays later was when Dracovic himself just ran the ball in on a pretty nice bootleg. He goes 23 yards for a touchdown. Next drive, throws a pass to Konate Mumfield, a short pass again, which is what we saw a lot in the first half and really this whole game. They didn't try to stretch the field in this game. There was 1 or 2 throws. The one where he overthrew Bub Means. Obviously, Christian Bear took a shot or two, but they clearly weren't looking to stretch the field in this game. They had no intention of showing what their deep passing game might look like or how it might work. They weren't going to do that. And I think you saw it right from the start with the types of passes they were throwing in the first quarter and in the second quarter. So you get Sibo Flemister in the flat, and it happens to pick up 13 yards. You get Konate Mumfield. He breaks a tackle and goes for 12. You throw to Jake Renda for a 12-yard pass. One of probably the longest air yard pass of the day from Pitt's quarterbacks came on 1st and 10 from the Wofford 38. Dracovic threw a pass to Gavin Bartholomew that I thought was a good read, good progression, and a good throw. Bartholomew had to make a really good play to catch the ball, and there were defenders around him. So I mean, if the ball is not exactly where it needs to be, or Bartholomew doesn't make the play, there's a decent chance that ball is ending up in a defender's hand. But Bartholomew made the play. Dracovic trusted him and put the ball where it needed to be, and they end up getting a 28-yard gain out of it. So he's rolling a little bit now. He's completing multiple passes in a row, and he's looking pretty good. 23-yard pass to Carter Johnson comes next. A 16-yard pass to Dejon Reynolds comes after that. Konate Mumfield gets an 18-yard pass as they come to the end of the first half. And he's kind of rolling. I mean, I think he completed 8 or 9 passes in a row to finish. I think he completed 8 in a row. And really, I think he had 9 good passes in a row to finish the first half. With that other pass, the one incomplete pass being the one that Rodney Hammond dropped. So I think he really kind of had some good momentum. Now, start of the second half, he didn't start off well. What do you have? He had a pass to he had the play action pass to Bum Means. I think the one that was overthrown that could have been a touchdown. He had a bad pass to Sibo Flemister. But then he's at 3rd and 10 from the Pitt 25. He scrambles to his right and throws another one to Gavin Bartholomew and picks up 10 yards. And he moves the chains. He gets 15 yards on a Bub Means pass. He gets a couple short things, and then he throws a swing pass to Flemister and gets another 22 yards out of it. Scrolling down, and then the touchdown pass to Carter Johnson, which I'm going to give Carter Johnson a lot of credit on that touchdown catch. He made a great grab. I actually didn't like what Dracovic did on that play. I think Malcolm Epps looked to me like the primary option on that pass and looked to me like he was available to receive the pass. And Dracovic, even though he rolled in that direction, it just seemed, I think Epps ran a slant to the right, Dracovic rolled to the right, there's the pass. You make it. You throw it on the run. It's hard to defend. And I think they had the play, and Djokovic just didn't throw it, and he opted for a much more difficult pass to Carter Johnson. And credit to Johnson for making the catch. All in all, when you look at Phil Djokovic, stat line, 17 of 23, 214 yards and a touchdown. He also rushed 7 times for 41 yards and a touchdown. That's not the kind of full game stat line you want out of Phil Djokovic on most games. I mean, you don't want him sitting with 214 yards at the end of a game, but Christian Veilleux came in and threw for 60 yards. If Djokovic can end up with 274 yards passing and 40 yards rushing, and account for, two passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown, if you get put all those numbers together, let's say he gets Veilleux's stats, and actually Veilleux had 3 carries for 9 yards. Well, let's not do that. Let's just do Djokovic and Veilleux passing and Djokovic rushing. You're getting 274 passing yards, 40 rushing yards. Let's say 270 and 40. Let's say 310 total yards passing and rushing, and 3 touchdowns accounted for. Yeah, you take that every game, right? If you can get that kind of production out of Phil Djokovic on a every game basis. Now, every team they face is not going to be Wofford. And some of the mistakes that Djokovic made in this game today, he's not going to get away with against Cincinnati. He's not going to get away with against Florida State. He's not going to get away with maybe against Virginia Tech, as not good as they are probably going to be. He's not going to get away with some of those mistakes, but I think his issues were at the beginning of the game, he struggled, and at the beginning of the third quarter, he struggled. But in between those two stretches and a little bit after that rough start to the second half, I thought he made some really good passes. I think the playbook was limited, so we didn't see the downfield work as much as I think all of us wanted to see. Right? I think everybody wanted to see this team stretch the field. We heard how they were going to stretch the field. They were going to take shots. And I saw people on Twitter like, come on, they got to open this up. They got to take shots. And I mean, man, if you went into this game today believing they were going to take shots downfield in the passing game, you have missed most of the openers in the Pat Narduzzi era. I mean, not 2019 when they played against Virginia, and not last year when they played West Virginia, but for the most part, these openers, they've played it as vanilla and boring as possible with a lot of the kinds of passes you saw, particularly early in this game. Nothing, the longest pass downfield was 23, 25 yards or something like that. I mean, that constituted the deep passing game. It's just not what they were looking to do. It's not what they wanted to show. Now, I don't know what it's going to actually be like when they do those things. If they go out against Cincinnati next week and start taking shots downfield, I don't know if they're going to convert it. I don't know if Djokovic's going to be accurate. I've always heard that accuracy is a bit of an issue for him, so I don't know if he's going to hit those passes. I think they're going to try them more than they tried today, and I don't think they ever had any real intention of trying them today. But in the context of what he was being asked to do, I thought Djokovic did a pretty good job. I thought he made some nice throws. I thought he trusted his players, trusted his playmakers and his teammates, and he was rewarded for it. You know what I mean? When Sibo Flemister's going for 20-some yards, when Konate Mumfield is breaking a tackle, or when Bub Means on that first big play of the game is catching a short pass, probably like 7 yards, 8 yards downfield, and turns it into 20-some. You trust your playmakers to make those plays, and Djokovic did. And so credit to those guys for making the plays, but credit to Djokovic for getting the ball to them. We saw some of the scrambling ability. We saw some of the running ability. We saw him shed a tackle or two. I think he lived up to that part of his billing. Some people I saw some people questioning his athleticism. I mean, like you couldn't go into that game expecting him to be, Mike Vick or even like a Kenny Pickett or something like that. He's too big to run like that, but he can run, and he can run well for a guy his size. And so I think we saw him shed a couple tackles in this game, and we saw him get out and actually run and maybe surprise Wofford a little bit with how he could get downfield with his legs. So I think we saw that part of his game. I think the arm strength looks fine. I was never concerned about the arm strength with Djokovic, and again, we didn't see him try and throw it 40 or 50 yards down the field. I'm more concerned about accuracy. Accuracy is going to be the thing I want to see the most. I mean, if you have Bub Means in that situation like he had him, where, he's got 2 defenders on him, and but he's got to step on those guys. You got to hit him, because Bub Means, if he's got to step on a defensive back and you get the ball to him in stride, he's not going to get caught. He's fast enough that he should not get caught from behind. Now, I'm sure I said that Jester Weah would not get caught from behind, and we all know how that worked out. But I don't think Bub Means in that situation is going to get caught from behind. If you get that opportunity against Cincinnati, you get that opportunity against West Virginia, North Carolina, and so on and so forth, you've got to connect on that pass. I mean, those are the kinds of plays that will win you games, and those are the kinds of games that will cost you wins. So that's when he probably would like to have back. And if he gets that opportunity again, he needs to put the ball down there. All in all, I didn't see anything that maybe made me terribly concerned about Phil Dracovic. If he came out and looked like total crap, if the way he played on the first series, if he played like that for the entire game when he was in, I'd be concerned. We would have a different tone right now. Not because I think they would have lost the game, but just because we'd be talking about Phil Dracovic very differently. I didn't see anything that led me to feel that way. What I would have liked to have seen him connect on that Means pass. I would have liked to have seen him make a better decision on the pass where he ultimately threw the touchdown to Carter Johnson. But overall, I thought he did a decent job running the offense in what was probably a pretty limited version of the offense, which I think can be challenging at times when you're sort of confined to probably a smaller group of plays, a limited set of plays. I think that can be a different kind of challenge in and of itself. But they were able to push Wofford around on both sides of the ball. I think they were able to get what they wanted in the running game, and they were able to control everything Wofford did not pretty much. They controlled everything Wofford did throughout the game. Up until that 75-yard pass, Wofford had 51 yards of total offense. I think, at that point, because I tweeted it right before that Wofford drive. I said, Pitt has 45 points, Wofford has 51 yards. And then Wofford added another 75 on like the very next snap. So I'm going to shut up about it and not point those things out. But I mean, it was a dominant performance on defense. They gave up very little, and there was a strong enough performance on offense, and I think an encouraging enough performance on offense. Daniel Carter ran well. Sibo Flemister made some nice plays. Rodney Hammond looks like he's ready to go, and those receivers, we'll talk about those guys a lot, I'm sure, as we go through tonight's show. Let's see what everybody's got going on here. Get into the live chat, the live stream, and see what people are saying. Let's scroll through. We got some super chatters. I want to get to you guys first. As always, if you want to make sure your look, we got a lot of comments and questions in the chat, and sometimes we don't get to all of them. We try, but we don't always get to all of them. If you want to make sure your comment gets read or your question gets answered to the best of my ability, you can be a super chatter. You can support the show by clicking the little $ down at the bottom, and you can support the podcast, and we will make sure we get to your comment and your question. Let's see here. RJC Man 38 is a super chatter. He says, you got a few comments, so I'll pick this one. It says, I want West Virginia to get beat up. I want Carolina to get beat up so Pitt can beat them up more. So rooting for both to lose. It's been asked way too many times this week on Twitter. But the question of whether you want West Virginia, who you want to win, West Virginia or Penn State, because I think Pitt fans hate Penn State more than West Virginia, but it also, West Virginia, you do have to play them next week. I don't know. To me, there's no downside for Pitt fans if West Virginia wins this week. Builds their confidence or whatever. You don't play West Virginia next week. You play them the week after. I think if West Virginia were to somehow win this game, then you would have a West Virginia team with a better record, good win on their resume, and then it looks even better if you can pull off that win on the road in Morgantown in 2 weeks. Plus, I think if you hate one team more than the other, you probably hate Penn State more than West Virginia. As far as Carolina, though, yeah, I get wanting them to be beat up, wanting South Carolina to win, and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I don't know who you root for. On one hand, you want the ACC to do better. You want your opponents to have more success so you can, beat a team with a better record. It looks better on your resume, but I don't know what the right answer is. It's probably your own personal preference and which one you dislike more. Michael B is a super chatter. Good to have you back. He says, hi, Chris. Been a while. So I just want to give you my thoughts on Djokovic. I wasn't impressed. I don't have confidence in the offensive line either. My gut tells me Pitt is going to be running the ball a ton this season. Thoughts? Yeah, I think they're going to run a lot. I mean, if you had asked me that yesterday, I would have told you that. I think they are going to run a lot. I think it's still going to be the nature of their identity. I mean, there's still going to be a run-based offense. I think they'll throw it more than they did last year. I don't think they're going to be they're not going to be like, the Mark Whipple offense in 2020 or 2021. They're going to be a run-based offense. They're going to throw more, but not more than they run. You know what I mean? The runs are still going to be where the offense is based. Djokovic, I'm not taking anything. I would have liked to have seen him hit the Bub Means pass. You know what I mean? That was a big part of it. I would have I feel like that was one big flaw. I think he struggled when he started, but he improved. I think he settled in. He got comfortable on the field and started just taking what was there and trusting his playmakers. And I think that's a good way to approach it. You're going to have to hit those shots at some point. You're going to have to be able to attack vertically at some point. You're going to have to be able to do it in the course of the offense, not just scramble drills where you run around and, oh, look, there's, Carter Johnson standing by himself 17 yards downfield. It can't be that. It's got to, there's going to be some element of that, but you've got to have in the offense a downfield passing attack. And we didn't see that from Djokovic today. We didn't really see him attempt it. And the one or two times that he did attempt it, he didn't connect. He missed those shots. So he's got to get better at that. He's got to get better on his accuracy, and he's got to improve in that regard. Otherwise, I'm reserving judgment. Let me see exactly how you said that. Wasn't impressed. I'm reserving judgment on Djokovic until we see them play a real team and with what we presume is the full offense. I remember back in 2017 when they had to go to overtime to beat Youngstown State. And I sat here and said, that's not going to be their offense. That's not the reality of what their offense is. And they're gonna have more in their offense than that. And it's not just that. They were holding stuff back for Youngstown State. And they ended up kind of not being very good on offense that season. Now, they had a lot of issues on that offense, issues that you would hope don't befall this year's team, particularly with injuries to the quarterbacks and just overall bad quarterback play. But I think we'll see them try to take more shots. It's not going to be every play. And this is the other thing. We're going to spend all week talking about how they're going to take more shots downfield and they're going to open it up and they're going to be attacking. And then we're going to get into the game and they're not going to try and throw a pass of more than 15 yards for the first quarter and a half. It'd be like, wow, where's all the downfield passing game? Where's the big passing game? And it's not going to be that kind of offense. It's not going to be I don't think it's going to be that kind of offense that's built that way. But I do think they will try those things more than they tried last year. And I think they've got players who can make those plays or who are better positioned to make those plays than they were last year. You know what I mean? Whether it's Bub Meads, whether it's Konate Mumfield, whether it's Phil Djokovic who can throw those balls. That's, I think we'll see more of that, but we need to see Djokovic actually connect on it before we can sit here and say, yeah, they're going to be really good at it and it's going to be a big part of their offense. I think, and you talk about not being impressed with Djokovic, I think there is this middle ground where he can just be a good college quarterback. You know what I mean? He doesn't need to be somebody who, is a Heisman Trophy finalist or a Davey O'Brien Award or anything like that. He doesn't need to be ACC Quarterback of the Week every week or any weeks. He can be a solid quarterback. You throw for, 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's a good week. With the running game that they should have or that they're going to try to have, that's a good week. 225, 200. Well, what number would constitute a good week? 240 yards and 2 touchdowns, 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think he could be that kind of quarterback, and it would be good enough for this offense. If they can run the ball well, they can succeed with that. You know what I mean? And you can get that 25, 26 passing touchdowns that we've talked about a lot, 24 to 26, as being a real target for this team that should give them a chance to win a lot of games. So I think he can be that, but it's hard to sit here and evaluate it. As far as the offensive line, I mean, I'm still pretty bullish on that group. I think they had a few breakdowns today. I think, you're going to have some communication issues and cohesiveness issues when you're putting a new starter in with Jason Collier at left guard. But they also switched guys up quite a bit. Ryan Baer rotated in a little bit at right tackle. I think BJ Williams got a series at right guard, I think it was. Right guard or left guard, I forget. He was in for a series. And then, of course, late in the game, they just subbed all of them out. They had Ryan Baer in there at left tackle. They had, Terrence Enos in there. Jackson Brown got some snaps. B.J. Williams played some more. Terrence Moore was in there at center. There was one other, I forget who the other backup guard was. B.J. Williams was in at right guard. Oh, Dorian Ford played some at left guard. So, I mean, they really kind of emptied the bench late. I didn't really see anything that changed my opinion too much about the offensive line. I still think that unit's going to be a strength, and I have pretty high expectations for them. I think they'll do a good job opening up holes for the running game, and then also protecting the passer. I mean, we'll see against a Power 5 FBS defense, but I think they'll be good. There's another super chatter. Biz says we will know very quickly next week what we have. Yeah, I mean, the real games start now. This is not a season where you've got, an FCS team and two group of 5 teams, and then one Power 5 non-conference opponent. This is a loaded schedule here on out. 11 games, and every one of them is either in the ACC, the Big 12, or Notre Dame. It's all you don't have a UMass in there. You don't have a Kent State in there. You don't have a Toledo in there. I shouldn't say Northern Illinois because they're a real danger. You don't have one of those teams in there. You are it's 0-60 now, man, and you're going to be playing real teams from here on out. And I don't know if Cincinnati's any good. I don't know if West Virginia's any good. I don't know. I haven't flipped over to the Carolina game to see what's going on there, but I don't know if they're any good. But I do know that these are going to be far more evenly matched competition. It's going to be a far more evenly matched competition than today was. And so you're going to find out. You're going to find out if, how good your offensive line really is, how good your quarterback really is, how good your defense really is. Let's talk about the defense just for a second here before I get into more. I'm going to talk about the defense for a second, then we're just going to be comments and questions pretty much the whole way. You guys have been doing a great job in the chat. I love it. Defense really spread out effort here. Bengali Kamara led the way with 4 tackles. Dayon Hayes had 4 tackles and a sack right off the bat. I mean, the first play of the game after a false start, DeAndre Jules, who got the start, busts through the offensive line, flushes the quarterback, and Dayon Hayes gets a sack. The next play, Jules gets a tackle for loss on the running back. DeAndre Jules announced his presence with some big plays right there. Dayon Hayes gets a sack in this game. Bam Brima and Sam Okunlola get sacks in this game. Bengali Kamara got a sack in this game. Tackles for loss, Kamara, Hayes, Jules, Solomon DeShields, Bam Brima, Sam Okunlola. They had 6 different guys record a tackle for loss. I mean, this was, this was a dominant defensive performance. And here again, all the questions I had, and this could probably apply to the whole team, but all the questions I had about the defensive line and the defensive ends, and I think I see that Penn State has now missed 2 field goals while holding on to a 1 touchdown lead. That will never come back to bite them for sure. All the questions I had about the defensive ends and the defensive line, they weren't answered today, only because of the level of competition. And here's what I would say about, and this would apply to the D-line, to the quarterback, to pretty much everybody, all right? No position on this team, I didn't have any of my questions answered about any position on this team today, and that's a good thing, because the only answers you're going to get out of a game like this are bad ones, right? Because if you go out and light them up, you win by 38, and you get 6 tackles for loss and 4 sacks, and your quarterback puts up, the yards, and you get all that stuff. You get 500 yards and 45 points and all these things. Good. That's what you're supposed to do. Let's see what happens against real teams. But if you don't play well, if you struggle, if you don't score a lot of touchdowns, you give up a bunch of points, they go up and down the field on you. Now that's an answer, because that means that you're in trouble. That means you're not good. So we didn't come out of today with any answers about this team, and that's a good thing. Because we had, I mean, the only answers you're getting out of a game like this are bad answers. So when it comes to Pitt's defense, I'm slightly more encouraged because they were able to come out and dominate the way that you would think you should be able to. Obviously, still reserving judgment until they play real teams, but particularly up front, I thought they did a good job getting pressure on the quarterback, containing the run game. There was some stuff with some plays outside. I think there was an option run. They picked up 14 or 15 yards, and you got to work on how to defend that kind of thing. I feel like, actually, let me find that play because I feel like they had, so on that play, okay, so this was pretty interesting. This was Wofford's third drive of the game. It was in the first quarter, right near the end of the first quarter. And Pitt had, I think this was the first time they went with their second team defensive unit. All right, so they had a defensive line with Nakai Johnson and Bam Brema at defensive end, Tyler Bentley and David Green at D tackle. The linebackers were Brandon George in the middle with Kyle Lewis at star linebacker and Bengali Kamara at money linebacker. And then they had A.J. Woods and M.J. Devonshire at corner and P.J. O'Brien and Javon McIntyre still in at safety. But you really had your second team front seven in. And on the first play of the drive, Bengali Kamara got called for roughing the passer and came out. Nick Lappy came in and played the money linebacker spot the rest of the drive. The next play, a first down because of the penalty, they ran an option, and they ran it outside, and I think they ran it to Kyle Lewis's side. He was playing the star linebacker, so he was on the wide side of the field. And unlike, you remember, I think was it Kavanaugh, or maybe it was Walt Harris, who would run option plays with Ray Kirkley to the short side of the field, and you'd just be banging your head off the wall. But I think they ran it to the wide side of the field, and so, I mean, that's Kyle Lewis out there, and either Nakai Johnson or Bam Brema. I mean, they have to learn how to play an option. You know what I mean? And maybe they weren't entirely prepared for that play to come out. Although, given how well it worked, I don't think Sean Watson called another one after that. If they tried, they only tried one or two. I mean, they didn't go back to it very often to try and take advantage of whatever they found in that situation. But I mean, that was a bit of a youth issue, and it was one of the biggest plays that got made, and it was really probably just because of an mistake of inexperience and not keeping contained and how to defend the option and who takes the pitch guy and all that kind of stuff that we always used to talk about when they played Georgia Tech with Paul Johnson every year. So you had a little bit of that inexperience that led to a play or two, but on the whole, they pretty much contained it. And I thought it was interesting to see some of the alignments they brought out, some of the ways they use guys, the different guys that they got in there. Braylon Lovelace got in there in the second quarter, playing money linebacker. I wonder if Bengali Kamara was kind of still in the doghouse at that point. They did use their Delta defensive sub-package, the third down package. They used that. Most often it was Deion Hayes and Nate Temple with DeAndre Jules up front, and then what they told us, A.J. Woods coming in as the extra defender, basically playing a star linebacker and what was effectively a 3-4 defensive alignment, and that group did pretty well. I don't think they gave up a third down conversion against the Delta. I'd have to look and double check, but I'm pretty sure they... Yeah, I'll go through that another time. I mean, they did well. I mean, their defense pretty much controlled the game against Wofford. You know what I mean? And 51 yards until that final play, which was a blatant... I mean, it wasn't even a push-off. I feel like he threw the guy to the ground. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even think the Wofford receiver pushed off the Pitt defender. I think he just threw him to the ground, and that, should have been a penalty. I don't know how you get 75 yards out of that and a touchdown when it's pretty clearly a penalty. But whatever. 51 yards, even 126 yards. You give up 126 yards and 7 points. You hold them to less than 19 minutes of time of possession. I mean, you dominated the game. You did what you were supposed to do. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great defense all season. It doesn't mean that there aren't going to be mistakes that haunt you throughout the season, particularly as you play against better teams. But in this game, you did what you were supposed to do, and that's, like I say, it's better than the alternative. All right, let's get into chat, comments, and questions, see what you guys are talking about here tonight. We got another Super Chatter. Biz is down there. I missed it, Biz. What'd you say? Biz says, super excited for next week's schedule is set for being ranked. If Pitt can keep it together, I'm extremely excited. Yeah, and that's like something that's going to come out of this is, again, when you talk about it being better than the alternative, I mean, imagine how you'd be sitting here feeling if they didn't come out of this 45-7. If it was, 31-28 or 31-24 or 31-21 even. If it was just a lackluster, mediocre win. I mean, remember the 2016 game against Villanova? They won 28-7. They scored 3 offensive touchdowns. This is far better than that because without really trying, they put up 6 touchdowns and a field goal and held the opponent basically scoreless. So seems like a pretty good showing, and should get you excited to see what they can do when they face some real competition. All right, let's get into the comments and questions here. Jeff Shimonsky, I'm going to read as many of these as I can, but Jeff Shimonsky says Jurkovec looked good. I thought he did. I thought he had a pretty good game overall, not without its lowlights and not without its mistakes that could have, not without its mistakes that could have cost them, and will cost them in bigger games against better opponents. But I thought he did well given the circumstances. I thought he did well in this situation. David Allen says, love the athleticism, passion, and toughness on display by Pitt. Very wary of the 1990s offensive scheme by Frank Cignetti. Interesting to see if it works against talented defenses. Like I said, I think there's going to be more to the offense that we'll see. I think there's going to be, more downfield work. I thought they used the middle of the field pretty well. I thought it was pretty, I liked how they kind of looked in that area. Obviously, completing passes to as many guys as they did, I thought was pretty strong. I think it's good to see the ball spread around like that. Some of that is due to the fact that you were rotating in so many guys, particularly late in the game. You get a lot of freshmen and walk-ons and things like that in. And all 4 freshman receivers did play. Izzy Polk played, Zion Fowler-El played, Lamar Seymour played. Kenny Johnson was the first freshman receiver to get in. So all those guys got on the field, as well as Montravius Lloyd. Who else did I note, freshman-wise? Braylon Lovelace, Isaiah Neal played, and B.J. Williams. So unless I missed one, and I got to go back and double-check some things, I think there were about 8 freshmen who played in this game, which was impressive. But on the matter of spreading the ball around, yeah, they the numbers of how many receivers caught a ball. What was the final tally? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 6, 9, 12, 14 different players caught. Oh no, 13 different players caught a pass in this game. Derek Davis was targeted, but he didn't catch the ball. He dropped that one. But 13 different players caught a pass in this game. And I mean, like Mumfield, Means, Bartholomew, Flemister, Carter Johnson, Dejon Reynolds, Kenny Johnson to some extent, Jake Renda, and Rodney Hammond. Those guys are all going to play a lot. Malcolm Epps is going to play a lot. Jake McConaughey just went on scholarship. We'll see what his level of contribution is. Zion Fowler-El is a freshman. We'll see if he plays. But 13 receivers, 9 or 10 of them are going to be on the field a lot, and they spread the ball around them. I think that's a good thing. I think it's encouraging as they flesh this offense out. Biz says, I hate to say it, but I was very concerned in the first quarter. Yeah, on the first drive at least. I thought after the first drive it got a little bit better. By the end of the first quarter, they had not scored a touchdown yet, right? No, they scored a touchdown at the end of the first quarter. But you're right. The passing game really didn't look good until really the second quarter. The second quarter is when it really started to take off, and it looked better. But I'm with you. It didn't look great, particularly from the offense and Phil Jurkovec. It didn't look great in that first quarter. Dr. Acula says the broadcaster couldn't stop mentioning how Pitt's O-line wasn't playing as well as they should, that Wofford was pushing them back. Could be an issue moving forward. I think they could have gotten more of a push up front, but I didn't think they really got pushed around all that much. Wofford had 1 sack and 3 tackles for loss. But the tackles for loss, I think, one was Malcolm Epps caught a pass for -1 yard. Zion Fowler caught a pass for -3 yards. So I think those are 2 tackles for loss, right? I think those guys go as tackles for loss, and then otherwise, and then it was the sack on Dracovic. Basically was all of your minus rushing yards. I'm trying to look to see if it shows yards lost. Look somewhere else for the stats, but I mean, that was basically it. So I don't really feel like I feel like their offensive line held up pretty well and did a pretty good job today, and I think they'll keep getting better as they keep playing together. Mark Shilaju says not a lot to complain about, but the receivers never seem to get a lot of separation. Was this more of a vanilla game plan that didn't showcase them, or is this a concern going forward? I mean, I'm inclined to lean toward the game plan, but I'm also going to say that those receivers have to show that they can create separation. You know what I mean? Like, the receivers have to show that they can do it. It'll be a concern until they show that they can create separation. And some of that you're like, well, is it the talent of the players, or is it the scheme, that they're not being schemed open? And it's usually a combination of both, that the scheme needs to put them in a position to use their ability to get open. In certain routes, I mean, it's going to be hard to get open no matter how talented you may be. So some of that's on Frank Cignetti and some of that's on the players themselves, but they're going to have to find a way, to get open, as you said. And I think that's something that I'm not concerned about yet, but I will be if we see it continue to be an issue when they play Cincinnati and they play West Virginia and so on and so forth. Homer Simpson said at the beginning of the game, I thought Max Brown stole Phil's jersey, but he turned it into a pretty good game. West Virginia is looking good against Penn State right now. We got to play a lot better to beat West Virginia. Yeah, I mean, this game right now, it's 14-7. It should be at least 20-7, with 2 missed field goals, and they were in field goal range. I mean, probably should have gotten a touchdown at least out of 1 or 2 of those. For as much as I think we were expecting this, for as much as we were expecting Penn State to kind of dominate West Virginia, that's not really showing up. Even if they make the field goals, 20-7 is not exactly a dominant advantage. We'll see what the second half brings. But no matter what, even if Penn State rolls in the second half and the final score is like 35-7 or 40-7 or something like that, Pitt absolutely has to play better against West Virginia than they played today. Like I say, some of the mistakes they made today, they're not going to be able to make against West Virginia or Cincinnati because it'll cost them the game. A. Sabo says, not sure if this is good enough against a ranked opponent in the future, but it certainly was good enough today. Good win, boys. Yeah, that's like I was about to say, and that's the point. They did enough to win today, but they didn't just do enough to win today, right? They did enough to win by 38 points today. They did enough to put up nearly 500 yards of offense and hold the opponent to 126 today. They did enough to out-possess the ball, 42-18 today. So, and I wondered, once they went up like 14-0, 21-0, I was like, oh God, they're just going to sit on it. They're going to take all the air out of the ball. It's going to be the most boring thing we've watched, but maybe at least it'll be over fast. And they didn't. I mean, I think they kept trying to work different things while not doing too much or showing too much. So I thought they kind of held that balance pretty well. D. Tan says, I'm getting good vibes about Phil. If the O-line can continue to improve, we might have something on offense. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by Phil. I'll say that. I mean, that was the most I've watched him throw in a long time, and I'm intrigued by the skill set that's there. Wasn't perfect, but it was intriguing. Homer Simpson says, great game, though the only downside was Frank Cignetti calling run plays on 3rd and 6 and 4th and 3. My only thought there, I hear what you're saying, but like, if they have plays that they feel like are go-to plays on 3rd and 6, they don't want to show it against Wofford. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not making excuses, and maybe that's not the case at all. Maybe he is going to hand it off on 3rd and 6, or whatever it was. But I really think if you have something you feel is good for a 3rd and medium distance, 3rd and even, kind of long situation, you don't want to show it against Wofford. You really don't. I don't even know if you. I mean, you prefer to not have to show it against Cincinnati or West Virginia and save it for the ACC games, but you don't want to show it against Wofford. Really. So a handoff on 3rd and 6, yeah, it's boring. It's not going to make great entertainment, but as long as the game is comfortably in hand, which it was for most of the day, I'm okay with it. Let's see. Benjamin Glazer says, is it possible that our tight ends had more receptions today than in all of 2022? No, Benjamin, that is not the case. The tight ends had 7 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown today, which is great production. I don't think the tight ends had 7 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown in any game last season. Maybe the Tennessee game. Maybe the Tennessee game because Bartholomew had the long touchdown play. So let me bring up the box score of that one just to double check. But I'm pretty sure they didn't come close. Bartholomew had, okay, yeah. Gavin Alberto had 5 for 84 and a touchdown that day. So yeah, they had better production in that game than they did today. But look, if you get 7 for 75 and a touchdown out of your tight ends every game, that'll do, right? That'll do. Let's see. D-Tan says the tight ends definitely got some looks today, thankfully. Yeah, I thought the tight ends were good. I thought I liked how they were used. I liked how they were targeted. I liked when they were targeted. I thought for a game that probably isn't showing the whole playbook, I thought the tight end usage was good. Dr. Acula says Wofford was driving early and then fumbled. The game was over after that. Yes, they were driving. They got to the Pitt 46 when they fumbled. But that was their 3rd drive of the game. The first 2 drives, they went 3 and out. They never, after the fumble, they never got into Pitt territory again, other than like the 75-yard touchdown catch. They ran 2 plays in Pitt territory. One was a first down where they threw a screen pass. They got 0 yards, and the second was like I don't know if it was RPO or what it was, but the quarterback and running back were not on the same page, and the ball just went on the ground, and Bam Bremer recovered it. But they never got back there again. And the next drive, and so Pitt scored a touchdown, went up 14-0. The next drive, I mean, you talk about, if they actually were building some momentum on that drive, they lost it because of the fumble. Their next drive, Pitt was offsides on the first play, so now they're in a 1st and 5 from the 30. Now, I mean, if they had momentum on that drive where they fumbled, they should be able to carry some of it over. You got a good situation here. But on 1st and 5, Sam Okunlola had a sack for a -8. 2nd and 13, the quarterback scrambled and gained 2 yards. And on 3rd and 11, Bengali Kamara sacked him for -9. So I don't think Wofford was ever really, Wofford never had me. They never had their car. You know what I mean? Like, Wofford was never in it. They were never going to move the ball on this defense with any kind of consistency. And the only way they ever moved the ball on this defense is their receiver picked up the defensive back and threw him to the ground. He didn't pick him up, but he threw him to the ground for a 75-yard touchdown. That's it. All right. Royce Beacom asks, who is going to admit to taking the 37.5 points with Wofford? I mean, look, betting Wofford plus 37.5, I mean, that ended up being a pretty good bet. Or no, it didn't, right? Is that what it was? 37.5? Yeah, because they won by 38. 37.5. That would be that's a pretty brutal bad beat if that touchdown would have covered, but I don't think it happened. Let's see. Scrolling through here, see what people have to say. Scrolling, seeing the comments and questions, seeing what people have to say about this game. David Allen says, come on, we know exactly what the offense is going to be. 2 tight ends, fullbacks, and running the ball. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of that. They had 2 tight ends on the field a lot tonight. During today, they opened the game with 3 receivers, but then they went to 2 tight ends after that and 3 tight ends after that. But there are going to be 2 tight ends on the field a lot of times. they're going to, they're going to be two tight ends on the field a lot because I think they like what Gavin Bartholomew and Carter Johnson and Malcolm Epps can do. I think they're going to go with three receivers if they feel like they have three receivers that can help them. This is the other thing, too. When we start talking about having two tight ends on the field and all that, you've got Means and Mumfield. You need to find out who your third receiver is going to be. And if nobody really separates themselves and you feel like you get a better option with El Barto and El Carto, oh man, I just came up with that. That is good for 23, isn't it? El Barto and El Carto. If you feel good about Gavin Bartholomew and Carter Johnson, or mixing in Malcolm Epps or mixing in Jake Renda, then that's what you got to do. Because if you feel like those guys give you the best chance to move the ball. And if Dejon Reynolds becomes a reliable option, or Kenny Johnson becomes a reliable option, and Zion Fowler-El or Jake McConaughey, whoever it is, then you roll with those guys. But right now, you have two reliable receivers. You got to find out who else is going to step up into that group. And if nobody else is, then you got to go with the guys who can help you. And if that happens to be the tight ends, then it happens to be the tight ends. Austin Ferentz asks, current thoughts on the Bub Means Bengali Kamara hype train. Yeah, thought both guys played well. I mean, Kamara had that penalty, which was bad, but he still led the team in tackles and had a sack and a pass breakup. He was pretty close on making a couple other plays. Bub Means caught 2 passes for 39 yards. I think you would take that when you're averaging almost 20 yards per catch. He did not get into the end zone, but he also was targeted 4 times, caught 2 passes, got 19 yards after the catch. I think he had a pretty decent game. I think he'll be more heavily. I think there'll be a bigger focus there. Like I said, 7 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown for the tight ends. I think some of that emphasis will go to Bub Means a little bit more. The running backs also had their fair share of receiving work as well. Sibo Flemister had 2 for 35. Rodney Hammond had 1 for 15. Those guys were Montravius Lloyd had 1 for 7. I think that combines to about 4 for 57 yards. That's 11 catches for the tight ends and running backs that I don't think we're going to see 11 catches for those two positions in every game. So I think Bub Means will end up with even more than 4 targets if they're not emphasizing the tight ends and running backs as much, but you take what the defense gives you, right? All right, what else? Scrolling through here. Will says the inconsistent push by the O-line in the run game was slightly concerning. That won't fly against Power 5 competition. Yeah, I agree. I agree about that. I thought they did all right. I don't think there were any tackles for loss in the run game, right? I mean, I think those guys always I have to check and see if I can find the yardage, the lost yardage, and that kind of thing. But it seems to me that I think they can get better. I think it was the first game, and like I say, I have a lot of confidence in this offensive line. I think they're going to be good, and I think they are good. I think they already have been. Scrolling through here. David Allen says, of note, future opponents, Virginia Tech and Boston College both looked bad. Yeah, I mean, Boston College lost to Northern Illinois in overtime. That is a bad one for Jeff Hafley. Our old friend Jeff Hafley. Feel for him, but he's definitely going to be in a tough spot here. Excuse me. After losing that game, I mean, Northern Illinois is not a pushover by any means. Their quarterback is good, but I mean, you've got to. You can't lose that game. They lost to UConn last year. Lose to Northern Illinois this year. You can't lose that. Virginia Tech currently is in the second quarter. They're up on Old Dominion 16-7. Old Dominion is driving. So I'm not as worried about those two teams. I think they should be able to take care of business against Boston College and Virginia Tech. But the priority, of course, right now is coming up on Cincinnati and West Virginia. David Allen's a super chatter. Just says, thanks for your hard work. Thanks, David. Appreciate you. You're a good man. Let's see. James Green says, how's it going, Chris? What is something from this game that makes you worry about a particular position group? Something that gives you pause as the team moves on to playing better competition? It's an interesting question. I'll tell you. And I know I just said about the run game and the offensive line for the running back for the run game and the running backs and how Daniel Carter 11 for 65, Flemister 9 for 27, Hammond 5 for 25, Montrevious Lloyd 5 for 20. I mean that's a pretty good stat line. Daniel Carter probably looked the best. He had a 22-yard run. It was the longest of the running backs. I didn't think the backs looked necessarily spectacular today. And I don't know how spectacular I expected them to look. I don't know how spectacular I expect them to look this season. But I thought they looked just okay. Daniel Carter had some nice runs for sure. Rodney Hammond didn't get a ton of opportunities, so I think he was probably being held back a little bit. I think he'll be the primary featured ball carrier from here on out. So, I think it'll look different when he's the main guy. But I don't know. I think they could be a little bit better. I think that group probably needs to be better with how much this team is going to run, how much they're going to run the ball. I mean, so I would expect a little bit more out of the running backs. But I don't know if there was any position that really jumped out to me and I said, wow, that's a big concern now watching those guys. So that's a good question, though. That's a good question. Let's see. Royce Beacom says Vare has 3 years of eligibility. Doesn't Yarnell have 3 years of eligibility also? Yeah, that's true. He does. They both. They were both in the same recruiting class, and they're both sitting on the same eligibility. I think they're both redshirt sophomores this year. But let's see. All right. Oh, here. I'll take the last one from James Green. It says, conversely, what is a surprise strength? I was impressed with the pass rush. Honestly, I didn't think they would be bad. I didn't think they would be ineffective against Wofford. But I also didn't think they would dominate as much as they did. I've talked a lot about concerns about the pass rush and whether or not they're going to be good enough and if they're going to be able to generate a consistent pass rush. I mean, they got 4 sacks today, which is pretty good. I feel like they largely got them from the top line guys, which is what you want to see. I think sometimes the numbers can get inflated if the third teamers, fourth teamers just tee off. But I think they got them from the guys they wanted to get them from, and I think those the first and second team defensive ends played pretty well. I think they were productive. They created pass rush. They got in the backfield and pressured the quarterback, and I think that's what you want them to do. And so I was pleasantly surprised by that. I'm not convinced that they're going to be great this year. They're going to put up big numbers. They still have some work to do to prove that part. But I thought they played well, and I was encouraged by how they played because they could have easily come out in this game and been a non-factor, and I didn't think that was the case. I thought they were very much a factor and impacted the game and did so in a positive way. All right, 45-7, the final score. Pitt beats Wofford, and now the real games begin. So who knew we could do an hour and however many minutes this has been, an hour and 4 minutes, hour and 5 minutes, talking about Pitt-Wofford, but we certainly can, and I appreciate everybody joining tonight. These live streams are always fun. These are the most fun videos that we do, most fun podcasts. No disrespect to Jim on the Wednesday night live show or the morning pits that we do every week, but these things are fun. I really enjoy it, and so I'm glad everybody tuning in here to hang out for an hour after the game. We'll do it again next week after the Cincinnati game. It's going to be a little bit later for that one, but we'll do it all the same. We'll have an hour of Pitt Sports Talk, an hour of post-game reactions after Pitt Cincinnati next week. So make sure you tune in for that, and make sure you tune in for everything right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. The morning Pitt videos, the live Panther-Lair show on Wednesday night, and everything else that we do right here. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks again for tuning in tonight. Pitt wins. It's been a lot of fun, and yeah, looking forward to it. Hope it should be a fun week. getting ready for Pitt Cincinnati, and we'll have a lot of good conversations between now and then. So have a great rest of the weekend. Enjoy Labor Day, and we will talk to you Monday morning for the Morning Pit right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.